1789, in Versailles Palace. The smell of revolution hung heavy over gilded halls built on borrowed gold. But the real story wasn't cake or extra. It was an economic machine that devoured itself. Today, we're exposing Versailles' hidden financial engine and how it accidentally funded a revolution. Welcome back to Ancient Anomalies. Let's step into the Hall of Mirrors, where France's financial fate was sealed. Chapter 1. The Inheritance of Excess. Louis XVI inherited more than a throne in 1774. He inherited catastrophic debt. His grandfather, Louis XV, left behind nearly 4 billion livres in debt from endless wars and palace construction. Versailles itself cost more than building the Panama Canal. The annual operating budget equaled half the kingdom's revenue. But this wasn't simple overspending. Versailles was a political weapon, designed to control the nobility through economic dependency. Every duke, count, and courtier competed for royal pensions, military commissions, and church appointments controlled by the king. This patronage machine kept nobles at court, spending fortunes on fashion and gambling, politically neutralized but economically dangerous. The system required constant cash flow, which brings us to how France actually raised money. Chapter 2. Tax farming and financial engineering. France's tax system was medieval chaos. Over 400 different taxes existed across regions. The nobility and clergy paid almost nothing. The burden fell entirely on the third estate: merchants, artisans, and peasants. Instead of direct collection, the crown sold tax collection rights to private tax farmers called the firm gen. These financiers paid the government upfront, then kept whatever they could extract from the population, plus generous profit margins. The firm générale generated roughly half of royal revenue, but created massive resentment. They became symbols of corruption and greed. Tariffs added another layer. Internal customs barriers divided France into virtual separate countries. For trade purposes, moving wine from Bordeaux to Paris crossed multiple tax boundaries. This fragmented system strangled commerce and innovation. Meanwhile, Versailles consumed resources at astronomical rates. 1,600 servants, 5,000 horses, daily feasts for thousands of courtiers and guests. The annual fireworks budget alone exceeded the education spending for the entire kingdom. This wasn't just luxury, it was political theater. But the true financial catastrophe came from foreign policy. Chapter 3. The American Gamble. France's support for American independence cost nearly 2 billion livres. Finance Minister Jacques Necker warned Louis XVI. This would bankrupt France. The king proceeded anyway, to weaken Britain. Irony? France helped birth a republic based on Enlightenment ideals, while its own subjects suffered under absolute monarchy. French officers who fought in America returned home radicalized. Lafayette and others brought revolutionary ideas back to French salons. The American debt pushed France's annual budget deficit to unprecedented levels. By 1788, debt service consumed half of all revenue. The government was spending more on interest payments than on the entire royal court, including Versailles, legendary Chapter 4. The finance minister's impossible. Between 1774 and 1789, Louis XVI employed 4 different finance ministers. Each tried and failed reforms, and Robert Jacques Turgot proposed free trade reforms and tax equality. The nobility revolted. He was dismissed within 2 years. Jacques Necker published the kingdom's finances publicly for the first time, revealing the pension system's corruption. He too was forced out. Charles Alexander de Calonne proposed taxing the nobility. They refused. He suggested an assembly of notables. They rejected his plans entirely. Etienne Charles de Brienne tried everything. Forced loans, delayed payments to creditors, even suspending government salaries. Nothing worked. Credit collapsed completely. Chapter 5. The system breaks. By spring 1789, the French government could not borrow another sou. Literally, no one would lend to the crown. The harvest of 1788 failed. Bread prices doubled. Urban workers spend 90% of income just on food. Meanwhile, Versailles still glittered. Marie Antoinette's private theater company performed nightly. The contrast became unbearable. The Queen never said, "Let them eat cake." That was propaganda, but the real numbers were damning enough. Her personal spending, including the petty Trianon estate, cost roughly 6% of the deficit. Not nothing, but hardly the cause. The real culprit was structural. A medieval tax system trying to fund modern warfare and diplomacy in an age of enlightenment, with no other options. Louis XVI made the fatal decision. He called the Estates General for the first time since 1614. He hoped they would approve new taxes. Instead, he gave the people a platform, and they discovered their power. Chapter 6. From Economics to Revolution. The Estates General transformed into the National Assembly. Political crisis merged with economic desperation. The result was explosive. On July 14, 1789, Parisians stormed the Bastille, not primarily for political prisoners, but for the gunpowder stored there. They feared the king would use military force to dismiss the assembly and protect the financial status quo. The revolution's economic nature became clear. Nobles who fled became emigrants. Their estates were seized and sold to fund the new government. The despised firm générale was abolished. Its members, including Antoine Lavoisier, the chemist, were executed during the Terror. Versailles itself was abandoned. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were forced back to Paris, effectively prisoners. The palace that symbolized absolute power became a museum. The financial system that sustained it vanished overnight. But here's the twist. The revolution didn't solve France's financial crisis. It made it worse. War with Austria and Prussia from 1792 cost even more than American independence. The deficit ballooned further. The revolutionary government printed paper money called assignats, triggering hyperinflation. By 1795, they were worthless. It took Napoleon's military conquests and forced contributions from occupied territories to finally stabilize French finances. The palace economy was replaced by an imperial war economy. Chapter 7. The Historical Verdict. So what was Versailles' secret economy? It was a patronage system requiring exponential growth to survive. When growth stopped, collapse was inevitable. The problem wasn't Marie Antoinette's spending or even Louis XVI's weakness. It was systemic structural failure inherited across generations. Modern economists recognize it as a classic debt trap. Borrowing to maintain political stability, which requires more borrowing, creating instability. The tax system's regressivity meant those least able to pay carried the burden while those most able were exempt. When the privileged classes refused reform, they guaranteed their own destruction. Economic injustice became political revolution. Versailles wasn't destroyed by cake or it was destroyed by an economy that couldn't adapt to changing times. The lessons for today. Debt-driven systems require constant growth. Tax systems must be perceived as fair. Elite exemption breeds resentment. These lessons remain relevant. Versailles stands today as a testament to beauty achieved through systemic exploitation. Tourists walk halls that bankrupted a kingdom. The palace survived. The system did not, and that's the true anomaly. Not the luxury, but the economic structure that made it temporarily possible. Thank you for watching Ancient Anomalies. If this changed how you see history, subscribe for more hidden truths behind famous events. Next time, the Black Death's economic aftermath that accidentally created the middle class. Until then, question everything.